The lease agreement we keep renewing, why pain has an expiration date and you hold the pen. You know what? Nobody tells you about pain, that it has a lease agreement. And most of us keep renewing it year after year, like we're scared of what might move in if we let it go. We sign on the dotted line every single time it comes up for renewal, convinced that holding on to hurt somehow protects us, defines us, or proves we're strong enough to carry it. But here's the truth: pain was never meant to be permanent residency. It was supposed to be a temporary visitor, a teacher that shows up, delivers its lesson, and leaves. Yet we've turned it into a landlord, letting it dictate where we live emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. I recently had the privilege of sitting down with Nina Rogers for the Soft Girl Era podcast. And let me tell you, this conversation didn't just touch me, it rearranged something inside me. Nina just released a book called Hurt No More, and the title alone feels like a declaration of war against everything that's tried to keep us small, stuck in suffering. But what struck me most wasn't just the message, it was the woman behind it. Nina Rogers is someone who decided that hurt would no longer be her home address. She packed up, changed her zip code, and walked boldly into her next chapter of new blessings and happiness. And through her book, her voice, and her unapologetic commitment to healing, she's inviting all of us, especially high achieving Black women who've been running on fumes and faith, to do the same. Nina Rogers is making the world a better place by giving women permission to release what's been weighing them down and step into the fullness of who they were always meant to be. Her impact is profound because she's not just talking about healing, she's living it out loud and showing us the way forward. During our conversation on the Soft Girl Era podcast, Nina shared three truths that I want to unpack with you today. First, release the hurt to make space for blessings because holding on to pain blocks new opportunities. Second, embrace your next chapter with bold faith because pivoting from trauma leads to purpose driven success. And third, claim happiness as your birthright because as Black professionals, we've overcome so much. And now it's time to prioritize joy, healing, and unapologetic thriving. These aren't just nice ideas. These are survival strategies for women who've been taught that strength means silence, that leadership means loneliness, and that rest is something you earn after you're dead. Let's start with the first one: release the hurt to make space for blessings. Here's the thing about holding on to hurt: it's heavy and it's sneaky because sometimes we don't even realize we're still carrying it. We think we've moved on because we're successful now, because we've built something, because we smile in public. But that hurt is still there, sitting in the corner of our hearts like an uninvited guest who won't leave. It's taken up residence in the way we second guess ourselves, in the way we overwork to prove our worth, in the way we say yes when we mean no, in the way we shrink when we should expand. And the wildest part, we protect it, we guard it, we tell ourselves stories about why we need to remember it, why we can't let it go, why forgiveness or release would somehow mean we're weak or naive. We convince ourselves that holding on to the hurt keeps us safe, keeps us sharp, keeps us from being hurt again. But all it really does is keep us from being free. Here's what Nina Rogers reminded me during our Soft Girl Era podcast interview: letting go isn't about forgetting, it's about making room. It's about saying, I'm not going to let what hurt me yesterday block what's trying to bless me today. It's about understanding that the pain served a purpose. It taught you something, it revealed something. But now it's time to graduate from that lesson and move forward. Take Serena Williams, for example. After nearly dying from childbirth complications in 2017, after pulmonary embolisms that could have ended her life, after facing the kind of physical and emotional trauma that would break most people, Serena had a choice. She could hold on to the hurt, the fear, the loss of her athletic identity, the grief of what could have been, or she could release it and make space for something new. She chose the latter. She invested in therapy, in self care, in healing. She allowed herself to grieve the end of one chapter while preparing for the beginning of another. And then she took 14% of her wealth and poured it into diverse startups through Serena Ventures. Today, she's built a venture fund worth over $100 million. Dollars. She's invested in more than 60 companies, many of them led by women and people of color. She's empowered Black founders with over $111 million in funding. She didn't just survive her hurt, she transformed it into a legacy. She turned her pain into power and her trauma into triumph. That's what releasing the hurt looks like. It's not about pretending the pain didn't happen. It's not about spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. It's about refusing to let it define what happens next. It's about saying that was a chapter, not the whole story. Now let's talk about the second truth. Embrace your next chapter with bold faith. This one hits different because it requires us to believe in something we can't see yet. It asks us to step into a version of ourselves that doesn't exist yet. And for those of us who've been burned, who've been disappointed, who've been let down by people and systems and even ourselves, that kind of faith feels risky. It feels reckless. It feels like setting ourselves up for another heartbreak. But here's what Nina Rogers reminded me during our Soft Girl Era podcast conversation. Bold faith isn't reckless, it's intentional. It's saying, I've survived the worst, so I'm ready for the best. It's trusting that the same strength that got you through the pain is the same strength that will carry you into your purpose. It's knowing that your next chapter isn't just going to be different, it's going to be better because you're different now. Alicia Keys is a perfect example of this. After 20 years in the music industry, after dealing with beauty standards that tried to shrink her, after vocal strain and personal heartbreaks, and the exhaustion of being a Black woman in a male dominated industry, Alicia could have stayed where she was. She could have kept performing, kept smiling, kept pretending. She could have kept wearing the mask, literally and figuratively, that the world expected her to wear. But in 2016, she showed up to the Grammys with no makeup, and the world lost its mind. Not because she looked bad, but because she looked free. She looked like a woman who had decided that her next chapter would be written on her own terms. She looked like someone who had released the need to be palatable, acceptable, or small. She showed up as herself unapologetically, and in doing so, she gave millions of women permission to do the same. She founded Key Soul Care, a skincare line rooted in wellness and authenticity. Today, that brand is valued at over $40 million. Dollars. But more than the money, Alicia modeled something revolutionary for Black women everywhere. She showed us that pivoting from pain doesn't mean abandoning who you are, it means becoming more of who you were always meant to be. It means shedding the versions of yourself that were built to survive and stepping into the version that was built to thrive. That's bold faith. That's stepping into your next chapter, even when you're scared, even when you're tired, even when you don't have all the answers. It's trusting that the path will reveal itself as you walk it, that the resources will show up as you need them, that the courage will come as you step forward. And now, the third truth: claim happiness as your birthright. This one is the hardest for us, isn't it? Because we've been taught that happiness is something you earn, something you deserve only after you've worked hard enough, sacrificed enough, proved yourself enough. We've been taught that joy is a luxury, that rest is laziness, that softness is weakness. We've been taught to delay our own happiness until everyone else is happy, until all the work is done, until we've checked every box and met every expectation. But Nina Rogers said something during our Soft Girl Era podcast interview that I can't stop thinking about. She said happiness isn't a reward, it's a right. And we don't need permission to claim it. Melody Hobson's story illustrates this beautifully. She grew up in the Chicago projects. She joined Ariel Investments at 19 years old, facing discrimination and bias at every turn. She could have internalized the message that she didn't belong, that she wasn't enough, that happiness and wealth and power were for other people. She could have let the hurt of being overlooked, underestimated, and dismissed define her trajectory. But she didn't. She turned every no into fuel. She sought mentorship. She networked relentlessly. She built wealth not just for herself, but for generations of Black people who would come after her. Today, she's the co CEO of Ariel Investments, the chair of the Starbucks board, and a DreamWorks executive. Her net worth is over $4 billion. Dollars. She manages over $2 trillion dollars in assets, and she's mentored thousands of people along the way. Melody didn't wait for someone to give her permission to be happy, to be successful, to be abundant. She claimed it. She walked into her blessings with her head high and her heart open. She decided that happiness wasn't something she had to earn, it was something she deserved simply because she existed. And that's what Nina Rogers is calling us to do. That's what the Soft Girl Era podcast is all about. It's about giving ourselves permission to rest, to heal, to say no without guilt, to set boundaries without apology, to embrace softness without shame. It's about recognizing that we've been strong for so long. We've carried so much. We've led teams, raised families, held down households, carried communities. We've survived abuse, grief, betrayal, chronic overextension. We've done the work. And now it's time to do something different. It's time to release the hurt. It's time to embrace our next chapter with bold faith. It's time to claim happiness as our birthright. So here's what I want you to do. This week, I want you to identify one hurt that's been holding you back. Just one. Maybe it's a relationship that ended badly. Maybe it's a job you didn't get. Maybe it's a dream you gave up on. Maybe it's a version of yourself you've been too scared to become. Maybe it's a wound you've been carrying for so long you've forgotten what it feels like to walk without it. Write it down, journal about it, sit with it, and then release it. Not because it didn't matter, but because it doesn't get to define what happens next. Release it because you deserve to walk lighter. Release it because your next chapter is waiting and it can't begin until you let go of the last one. And then take one bold step toward your next blessing. Pitch that idea, start that business, publish that book, set that boundary, say that no, rest without explanation, choose yourself without apology, do the thing that scares you, the thing that excites you, the thing that feels impossible, but also inevitable because you deserve to hurt no more. You deserve to walk into your next chapter of new blessings and happiness. You deserve to live in your soft girl era, where softness isn't weakness, where rest isn't laziness, where joy isn't something you have to earn. Nina Rogers wrote in her book, Hurt No More, that some of her testimony is woven into those pages. And I believe that because transformation isn't just about what we say, it's about what we live. It's about the choices we make when no one's watching. It's about the courage it takes to let go of what's familiar, even when it's painful, and reach for what's possible even when it's scary. Serena Williams could have stayed bitter. Alicia Keys could have stayed burned out. Melody Hobson could have stayed small, but they didn't. They released the hurt. They embraced their next chapters with bold faith. They claimed happiness as their birthright. And so can you. So can we. I want to leave you with this. The lease agreement you've been signing with your pain, it's up for renewal right now. And you have a choice. You can sign it again, keep carrying what's been weighing you down, keep living in the same emotional space you've been living in for years. Or you can let it expire. You can pack up. You can move into something bigger, brighter, softer, and more abundant. Your next chapter is waiting. Your blessings are lined up. Your happiness is ready to be claimed. But none of it can happen until you release the hurt and make room for what's next. So this week, don't just think about it, do it. Write it down, release it, take that bold step, walk into your blessings, choose yourself, choose joy, choose softness, choose healing, choose happiness because you've hurt long enough. And your next chapter, it's going to be beautiful.